The studio lights burned bright, and the cameras rolled as millions tuned in to watch what was promised to be a fiery debate. Candace Owens sat poised, sharp as ever, with her notes neatly stacked on the table. Across from her was Senator John Kennedy, known for his wit, his blunt honesty, and his ability to cut through noise with a single sentence. No one in the audience, not even the producers, could have predicted what was about to unfold. From the very beginning, Candace came out swinging. She challenged, she interrupted, and she dismissed Kennedy's points with the kind of confidence that made her a household name. The crowd in the studio nodded along, some clapping at her jabs, others laughing at her sharp retorts. It seemed, at first, that Kennedy was outmatched. He didn't interrupt her. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he leaned back, hands folded, waiting. Then came the turning point. Candace fired off a comment, dismissing his policies as outdated and accusing him of clinging to a broken system. The audience chuckled, sensing victory for her. Kennedy, however, simply looked at her with a steady calm that made the room quiet down. His voice was slow, measured, but heavy with weight when he finally spoke. "Candace," he said, "the truth doesn't care about applause, and it doesn't need to shout to be heard. It's steady, it's patient, and it always shows up, and no matter how many people try to twist it." The room went still. Candace blinked, taken aback by his tone. He wasn't mocking her. He wasn't even angry. He was speaking from a place that felt deeper than politics, as something rooted in years of experience and scars most people couldn't see. Kennedy leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. "You say I'm clinging to a broken system, but let me ask you, Tisa, what happens when we stop fighting for principles that matter? What happens when we trade truth for applause, or conviction for convenience?" "I've seen what happens. Families fall apart, communities fracture, and a nation loses itself, one compromise at a time." The audience shifted uncomfortably, sensing the gravity of his words. Candace opened her mouth to respond, but for the first time, her voice caught. It wasn't that she didn't have a comeback, or Candace always had a comeback. It was that Kennedy's words weren't just an argument, they were a mirror. She tried to brush it off with a laugh, but the crack in her confidence was visible. "Well, Senator, that sounds nice," she managed, "but the world doesn't run on poetic speeches." Kennedy didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned even closer, lowering his voice so the audience had to lean in too. "You're right, the world doesn't run on speeches, it runs on choices. And every choice we make, every law we pass, every truth we tell or refuse to tell decides what kind of country we leave behind." "That's not poetry, Candace, that's reality." It was in that moment the studio fell utterly silent. No clapping, no laughing, just silence. The cameras zoomed in on Candace's face, and for the first time in her career, she looked unsettled, and not because she was losing a debate, but because the weight of Kennedy's words had pierced through the armor she always wore. The host, sensing the tension, tried to move the conversation along, but the energy had shifted. Kennedy had spoken truth, not the kind that won headlines, but the kind that made people stop and think about their own role in the bigger picture, and whether they agreed with him or not. Everyone in that studio felt it. Candace tried to recover, offering another counterpoint, but the audience no longer laughed at her quips. They weren't entertained anymore, they were listening. Kennedy didn't gloat. He didn't grin at his victory. He simply leaned back again, quiet, as though he had said all that needed to be said. When the segment ended, Candace avoided his gaze as the cameras cut to commercial. Kennedy, on the other hand, stood, adjusted his tie, and shook her hand with the same calm presence he had carried the entire debate. That night, clips of the exchange flooded social media. Some people praised Kennedy, calling his words a rare moment of honesty in politics. Others defended Candace, saying she had been caught off guard but would bounce back stronger. But no matter the opinion, one fact couldn't be ignored. For the first time in a long time, people weren't just talking about who won the debate, they were talking about the message. And that was Kennedy's point all along. The lesson was simple yet powerful: truth has a way of cutting through noise, of silencing even the loudest voices, not through force but through clarity. It reminds us that in a world addicted to applause and sound bites, what truly matters isn't who talks the loudest, it's who speaks from the heart. In the end, The debate wasn't remembered as the night Candace Owens outwitted John Kennedy or vice versa. It was remembered as the night a single moment of truth silenced an entire studio and reminded a nation that integrity still matters.